everybody. Welcome to Mystery Monday with our beautiful Brice, Stephanie, and of course, Mornay. And I'm so excited to be here today because we're talking about creepy things. I love talking about creepy things. So, welcome, you two beauties, back with us again. It's so fun to have you. It's just been the craziest full moon ever, I think. I've got stories to tell about this full moon. However, maybe we should have an entire episode on just what happens on the full moon, right?
It's crazy. Any police officers watching or emergency room nurses, I would love to hear your stories about the full moon, because I know cops are superstitious. Yeah, I know cops are superstitious about that because they'll tell you most of their arrests happen on the full moon. So.
Nurses and medical assistants and doctors will tell you through and through. You will get the craziest things coming through that doctor's office or emergency room during the full moon.
Okay, that is a very good topic to actually explore. In fact, I think we should have it as one of our Mystery Monday topics, right?
Absolutely. How about do it. Maybe what next week we can do it.
Full moon mania.
Yes.
I love it.
We shall call it full moon mania because I want to tell you they were out in full force this weekend. However, we shall leave that topic for another day. So welcome, you beautiful men and women. So we're going to be talking about Robert the Doll. Now, I've never even heard about Robert the Doll, but all I know is I like the ghosty things. I mean, that's always fun. So over to you. What's today all about?
Well, I put a post on my community tab this morning. I usually do about 20, 30 minutes before I come on, reminding people to come over and join us because I know there's a live chat going on right now. I can't see the live chat. I think only Mornay and Shanti can. I want to hear. Oh, you can? Why can't I?
No, you can't. Just a comment.
Listen, never mind. I'm not gonna, because I will get distracted. All of a sudden, will stop talking and I'll just start reading the comments. So I probably don't need to see the live chat. So I really, I've said this on my channel so many times. I love to research weird stories because I'm just a weirdo at heart. But I like hearing, I opened my channel because I also want to hear like everybody else's perspective too. We can't just hold on to one opinion. I want to hear other people's perspective too. And I know that I covered this on my channel like a week ago, and I told Stephanie I don't want her to know anything about this story because she does have her cards with her. I want to be careful about how we ask these questions regarding this doll, because we also want to respect free will of the people who own the doll. But I have watched some psychic investigations into Robert the Doll, and it seems that possibly there isn't just one spirit attached to this doll, but possibly many. Now, Robert, just like last week when I told you guys black-eyed kids scare the shit out of me, and I've gotten so many emails of people laughing saying thank you very much. Now I'm scared of black-eyed kids.
Me, that was me. So my dog has me take her out when it's still dark outside at 5:30 in the morning. And every time I'm like, Abby, would you just go? Would you just go? I don't need one of these things coming at me. Please, I'm in the middle of the country. Let's just go. Yeah, I've been freaking every morning. I'm like, God, please have her wake up at 7 when the sun is up. Please.
No,
you're
just give that
to you walk outside, you're like, not today, Satan. Yeah, well, Robert the Doll scares me as well. I've known about Robert the Doll, and it takes a lot to really scare me. I will sleep in a haunted house, no problem. I mean, I slept fine at Stephanie's house, and her house is as haunted as fuck. So I was fine. I'm fine at all those kinds of things, but there are certain incidents that really freak me out, and Robert the Doll is one of them. In all due respect, Robert, if you're listening, because they tell us that you listen to these stories. So I'm very weary of this because I believe it. I believe that this stuff can happen. And so let's talk a little bit before I get into Robert the Doll. The reason why I want to talk about this particular situation is the idea of a spirit or a consciousness being able to inhabit what we would call an inanimate object. So that makes sense. So we know that consciousness, anything that's living, us human beings, our animals, the plant, has a living, breathing consciousness to it. Now, an inanimate object would be like furniture or like a book or for example, I told them, I did this on my channel. This is my childhood doll. This is my childhood doll. Her name is Hip, H-I-P, Hip, because I was like 3 or 4 when I named her. But this is Hip. Everybody in my family knows who Hip is. She now lives in my in storage in my closet. I only have a couple of toys from my childhood. She's one of them. This is one of my baby outfits I had in the 80s, so 80s, and I dressed Hip in this at one point.
Right.
She would go I know everybody says she's so creepy, but I love her so much.
No, she's gonna climb out the closet. Come grab
Everybody's
me.
eyes are so pretty. So let's
She's
talk about
sitting there
this.
lonely there. She's in that closet being lonely.
I know. Listen, I'm worried. I actually. So I'll tell you who's the most freaked out about Hip, my dog. And so I'm totally terrified that I'm going to come home one day and Ravi is going to have like totally just annihilated Hip. So that's why I keep her in my closet. But I want to talk about this because we know the story of the Velveteen Rabbit, right? Like that's a big story we have as kids. The Velveteen Rabbit, where the little boy loved the stuffed rabbit so much, then he got sick and they had to burn all the toys, but the rabbit popped away as a real rabbit because kids in my, like I did not, the last time my parents moved, I went and grabbed Hip. Stephanie has met my mother. My mother is not a hoarder. So I didn't want her to get rid of Hip because I loved her so much as a child. Like this doll went with me everywhere. I loved her so much as a child. So for me, she's very much alive in that sense. And I still have a soft place for this toy. Now, if I had a child, I would absolutely let my child play with Hip. I would pass Hip down to my child. But I want to make that clear. Like we all have toys, our stuffed animals, our blankets from our childhood that we loved a lot. That's like the Velveteen Rabbit that was real to us. But the thing about Hip are a lot of these other toys we have, they're not doing shit. Like Hip doesn't walk around my house and cause bad things to happen. That's the difference that when we get into Robert the Doll. So I don't want to freak people out. Like if you have some toy from your childhood, I don't want to freak you out. I'm going to embarrass my cousin. I won't say which cousin. I have lots of cousins, but he's like 10 years younger than me. And when he was a little boy, his blankie was one of his mother's nightgowns, one of her silk nightgowns. And it was hysterical because he would walk around, because it smelled like his mom. He would walk around holding this silk lady's nightgown as a little kid, like sucking his thumb. He eventually had to cut it so it wouldn't look like a lady's nightgown. It would just look like a piece of fabric because it was so inappropriate. But it was his comfort, right? Because it smelled like my aunt. It smelled like his mother. So sorry to my cousin who's watching if I just embarrassed you. I won't say your name. But anyway, so let's get into Robert the Doll. So Robert the Doll is now held at a museum down in Key West, Florida. And Mornay, I think, can you show the picture of him in his case? This doll was donated. No, not him, the doll. When in his case, that one, yes. So this, ladies and gentlemen, this is Robert the Doll. Now, I want you to notice behind the wall there are a bunch of letters. These letters were written by people who have visited Robert the Doll and did not follow the 4 rules associated with Robert the Doll. So Robert the Doll, if you go visit him in the museum down in Key West, there are 4 rules you have to abide by. You have to greet Robert, tell him your name. You have to ask his permission to take his picture or film with him. And you have to be respectful to him. You can't say anything derogatory to him. And then when you leave, you have to say goodbye to him. Now, again, all those letters in the back there are from people, and you can Google letters written to Robert the Doll, who broke one of the 4 rules, and then after leaving had just all this awful stuff happen to them. We're talking bankruptcy, divorces, cheating, all this one after the other. And so they write letters of apology to Robert the Doll so that he will remove the curse from them. And if you are in America, I don't know if you're from another country, you can just Google it. There is a docuseries that is now out about, they interview a lot of people who experienced Robert the Doll. Now, this docuseries is what got me interested in actually covering this case. Because like I said, I've known about this for a long time. I just didn't want to touch it because it freaked me out. But this was there's another picture, Mornay, of Robert's aura. This is what got me. This is what was like a gut punch to me. Now, I do know, not that one, the one of his aura with the pink and purples coming out. All right, so that was taken by one of Robert's quote unquote victims. And she's in the docuseries. Now, again, an inanimate object, so an object that has no consciousness to it, should not have an aura to it. There should be no aura. Only humans, animals, plants. And this woman came in there and took a picture of Robert. I can't remember which rule she broke. Maybe it was taking the picture. And she caught this aura. So this means, according to this picture, that there is a consciousness that is attached to this doll. And so when I saw this picture, I was like, holy shit balls, we got to cover this. We got to talk about this. Because in this Great Awakening, we know, I mean, Shanti and Mornay have our friend Jessie Zaboter on their channel all the time talking about the shenanigans that the controllers get up to. They understand consciousness. They understand the way that our soul works. And so that's why I want to talk about this, is because there are objects, I believe, that have souls either attached to them or trapped on them. And I think as we move forward into the new timeline, we have to understand this, because our God is the God of healing, right? Not the God of destruction, but the God of healing. And so I really wanted to bring this up. So let's talk a little bit about Robert the doll and how he got this.
Before you speak about Robert the doll, apparently Hip's a little flirt. She just winked at Life of Brian.
Yeah. I also
What about
saw
you?
Well, Hip's about my age. She's probably pushing 40 herself, because I got her when I was like 3 or 4. Hip's the name. Like, who names their doll Hip? Obviously, a 3-year-old does.
Well,
Hello,
that doll
Scotty.
was
Nice to see you guys. Life of Brian at the doll
Life
weekend.
of
No,
Brian.
take her away. Bring it back. She needs a friend, guys. She needs a friend. You need to donate her to a friend. Otherwise, she's going to get creepy in your closet and she's going to come back and haunt you. Seriously. That doll needs a friend. You got to donate that doll. She's going to get resentment because she's in the closet.
If I took her onesie off, you guys would see like water stains on her. Her body is cloth. Her hands, legs, and arms are plastic. But apparently, I bathed her at one point when I was a kid. Like, I colored on her. I think she has a little mascara and eyeshadow on her at one point. So Flip and I have been through hell and high water together. So Life of Brian, she just wants to cute them, buddy. So not everyone. In Life of Brian, not everyone can say that a doll has winked at them. So you have a story now, but you are special. So.
Especially not that one with the big eyes looking.
Very serious.
She's very cute.
Listen, I'm a terrible flirt. I'm notoriously terrible at flirting. I don't know when I always assume guys just want to be my friend. I have no idea they actually want to like date me or boink me or whatever. I'm like a terrible flirt. So if Hip is flirting better than me as a doll, then that's really sad for me.
You know the ventriloquist thing, right? You know how the ventriloquist works. So maybe you like winking out there.
I mean, seriously, if you want to date me, you literally have to come up and just say it, because otherwise I'm like, okay, I'll be your friend, and I have no idea that you actually want to be more than a friend. So I'm clueless. So anyway. Well, Brian, maybe I can get Hip to send you some dirty little pictures soon. I'm just kidding.
Oh my God.
No, just became very creepy.
Anyway, she's pushing 40. She's old enough. She's pushing 40 at this point. So, all right. So who is Robert the doll? So how did Robert come about? So he was owned by a family called the Otto family. Now, here's something interesting that I found in my research that I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. So Robert became notorious in Key West, Florida. Well, Key West, I would love to live in Key West, Florida, but Key West is the southernmost point of the United States. It's in the Florida Keys. The Beach Boys, I think, sang about Key West, right? So it's deep, close to the Caribbean islands, all right? Now, it became a part of the United States in 1823. Before then, it was owned by the Spanish, as Florida was owned by, Florida means a flower in Spanish, right? So in 1823, it officially becomes a part of the United States. Now, because of its location, Key West is a huge port town. Now, this is what was interesting, and I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. port towns are notoriously across the world some of the most haunted locations. So like my mom's family is from Charleston, South Carolina. That's one of the most haunted cities in the United States. It was a port town. Well, why is this? Obviously, that's where we get the term airport from. Back in those times with ships, this is where people were coming in through travel. This is where there was a lot of wars. This is where there was a lot of military action. So we often find with port towns a lot of brothels. So there's a lot of emotion that's happening. And we know that emotions, that even as us as humans, alive humans, can imprint emotion in an area. Like it is true, we have haunted clothes. Like you might have a shirt that you wear, and every time you wear the shirt, something crazy happens because something crazy might have happened to you in the shirt, and that energy imprinted, right? Yeah. So that's so Key West itself already, before Robert even moves on into Key West, already had this reputation of collecting spirits. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. Now, the Ottos lived in a house that is now today called the Artist House. And so, Morning, I think I sent you a picture of this house. You can actually tour this house now if you're in Key West. This house was built between 1890 and 1898. The Otto family moved into this house around 1898. Okay, so the Otto family came from a long line of doctors, so they were kind of upper middle class family. Thomas Otto, the father, was a doctor, but in those days, what I found interesting is that doctors, and I get this because I come from a long line of doctors too, doctors at that point didn't make their money off of their patients, because a lot of times in those days, patients would barter with the doctors, like, you know, bake you a pie or something like that. So what they made their money off of, this was before we had pharmaceutical companies, is the doctors themselves actually sold pharmaceuticals. And so that's how they made their money. Now, with that being said, a lot of times around this time, doctors worked out of their houses. So a lot of patients would come to the doctor's actual house, which, if you guys are familiar with the Sally house, which might be another interesting topic for us to cover one day, that was a doctor's house too. And it's like one of the most haunted houses in America. So if you think about that, you also, so in this port town where you already have all these energies coming in and out, you have this house here now with a doctor in it who's also seeing patients who are stressed out, who are sick, who are scared, who are imprinting their energy actually in the house. Okay. Now, as far as the mother and father, Thomas Otto and his wife, I've never read anything super crazy about them. I do have a speculation though, which we'll get to later on in the show, about what happened with Robert. So now there's two accounts of who brought Robert the doll into the house. One is Thomas's father, and another is the wife, Thomas's mother. But regardless, this doll came from Germany. So one of the Otto family was on a trip to Germany, and they bought a doll that was manufactured by the Steiff Company in 1904. So the Steiff Company is a company from from Germany that actually created the teddy bear. All right, so they were responsible for the teddy bear. Now, there's speculation with Robert. Now, if we go back to the picture of Robert, Robert is not the size of my doll hip. Robert looks to be about the size, if he stands up, of maybe a 3 or a 4-year-old. So some people, it is speculated, believe that Robert wasn't actually a toy that was sold by the Steiff Company, but was perhaps a mannequin used to demonstrate children's clothing. So that's interesting to me as well, because if he was a mannequin standing on display in Germany before he was bought by the Ottos as a toy, then that's a lot of different clothes have put on him. A lot of people are touching it. So that, again, is another way to imprint energy onto this object. And the mannequins back then were not made like the mannequins are today. They were made of straw, cloth, all that kind of stuff. So I kind of tend to believe that theory that he was a mannequin just by his size. You know, like again, this is a typical toy. This is a typical doll. Very small.
Maybe Robert, that my size Barbie in that generation.
Well, we're going to get into my kid sister as well, because I had a my kid sister and my kid brother. Because a lot of people think that Robert the doll inspired Chucky, the movie Chucky. But no, the creator of Chucky said he was inspired by my kid sister and my kid brother. I had a kid sister, which were like, actually, my sister, my actual literal sister, not my toy, my literal sister, was born on Christmas Day And she was not due on Christmas Day, but she was born on Christmas Day. And I remember this Christmas because I remember coming outside and seeing my toys from Santa Claus, and then we had to leave and go to the hospital. And there's a picture of me on my father's shoulders looking over the curtain as my mother's giving birth to my sister, and my kid sister that I had gotten from Santa Claus is in between my dad's legs. Like he's holding the doll while I'm on his shoulders looking over the curtain. I don't know if my mother's watching right now. I don't know where that picture is, but you actually see my father holding that doll between his legs because I didn't get, my sister still owes me a Christmas, damn it. She still owes me a Christmas from that Christmas that was missed. No, I'm kidding. Because I had to leave my toys to go to the hospital because my mother's water broke. So yeah, we do have later on in the 80s, they did create like my kid sisters and my kid brothers that were about that size, or the life-size Barbie dolls. But in the 1900s, now I saw some speculations that it was strange that the Otto family gave this doll to their son because they brought it home for their son, a kid named Gene. For his third or fourth birthday in 1904. And I think people were kind of making a conspiracy out of this where there was no conspiracy, to be honest with you guys, because we're so now programmed to think, oh, they're trying to make him a girl or whatever. Well, first of all, back in that time period, from what I understand, it was very, very, very common for little boys to play with dolls. They didn't have the toys that we have now. Think about that. All of their toys were like wooden trains, or they played tea party. A lot of little boys would play tea party with their sisters. This was very common. It meant nothing. And I will say too, I have a nephew. I know that for little boys, a lot of times when they are that young, they will play with dolls, because just as mothers or when girls have a maternal instinct, boys do also have a paternal instinct. And so if you see a little boy playing with a doll, it means nothing. It absolutely means nothing. It's them expressing their paternal caring side on an inanimate object that they're not going to accidentally kill, right? Because if you gave
interesting. I want to just interject there. Isn't that interesting? Because it's so true what you say. And of course, me being me, I'm always going to look at why boys are, and in recent years have been so discouraged to play with dolls, because it's exactly true. It's exactly true what you say. Think of a dad and his newborn baby. I mean, he is in love. No one thinks he's a woozy if he does that. And of course, it's natural for boys. I mean, I remember my son. He was maybe somewhere between 6 and 8 months old, crawling, picking up a car or something on the carpet and going vroom, vroom, vroom. So it was like natural for him. I was amazed by that. I said, where on earth did you ever learn that? But that, as much as that's their natural instinct, it is also their natural instinct to bond, isn't it? So then they've been taught that it's not good to bond with their babies, because or with little beings, because playing with a doll for a boy, as you say, is connecting with that. And why has it been so discouraged? I find that interesting. Sorry, I know it might be slightly off our topic. But
no, I wanted to bring that up. I'm glad you can talk about it, because I do think sometimes in this Great Awakening, we're taking the pendulum and swinging to the extreme other side, where we're taking complete logic out of the situation. And honestly, for me, if I see a grown-ass man caring for a baby, that's sexy as hell. To see a man love on a baby, that's so sexy. To if you want to be a sexy man, be a good dad, be a good uncle, dote on those kids. And that's what, and a lot of times kids are mirroring the comfort they feel from their parents too. So when they love them, we're not going to give a 3 or a 4-year-old boy or girl an actual baby, because they would accidentally kill the thing. They would hold it by the neck, they drop it. So giving it a doll helps them express that caring for something, that we all have a responsibility to care for those that are smaller than us, that are younger than us. Most human beings, regardless of race, creed, religion, whatever, if they saw a child struggling, they would intervene immediately to protect that child. And so these children at this age of developing and mirroring their parents, having a doll is super healthy. It doesn't, it's them. I would want my boys. I mean, my nephew, he's a Scorpio. He's sensitive. He's way more sensitive than his sisters are, to be honest with you. So, that's that sensitive side, that nurturing side, that doesn't make you weak. It makes you in touch with your emotions. And, so I absolutely, I just want to put that out there, guys. And especially in that time period, there's no conspiracy here with them giving Jean a doll. Absolutely no conspiracy, in my opinion, whatsoever. This was a normal gift at this time for a little boy. But what proceeded after this is where shit gets weird. So right away, Jean became very obsessed with this doll. Now, there's two different stories that we're looking with as to why Jean gave Robert the name Robert. Now, some of the sources that I read said that Jean's full name was Robert Eugene Otto. Now, some of the sources said that he did go by Robert before the doll came into his life. And then he gave the doll the name Robert, and then he decided to start going by Jean, his middle name. But other sources said that no, he had always gone by Jean, and he gave the doll his first name of Robert. Now, some cultures, some people in this research I did believe that by Jean giving the doll Robert his name, that he was unintentionally giving the doll part of his being or part of his soul. I don't agree with this. And this is why I don't agree with this. The Ottos were an Anglican family. What do I mean by this? Now, I know in the Jewish culture, I have a friend who married a Jewish man, and their children can't be named after living family members because it's considered a bad omen to name your kid after living family members. But in the Anglican world, we do that shit all the time. Like, I cannot tell you, I went to school with boys who were like the third, the fourth, the fifth, named, my father was Edgar Lee Watson Jr. My grandfather was Edgar Lee Watson Sr. My grandfather went by Ed. My dad goes by Lee. If I had been a boy, I would have been Edgar Lee Watson the third. Like, we do this stuff. My name, Brice, is my mother's maiden name. So we name, that's in the Anglican world, that is very, very, very common to have children named after a living person. So I don't see anything nefarious behind this. Now, with that being said, I do believe, and we'll get to this at the end, that part of what has happened with Robert is more of a poltergeist experiencing coming from the child. So, and we'll talk about that at the end of the story. Now, the sailor suit that we see Robert in today was one of Jean's outfits. Just like I put one of my old onesies on hip, Jean dressed Robert in one of his sailor suits. I don't know what it is about sailor suits. My mother used to dress us up in little sailor dresses a lot. I don't know why. Some parents think that's cute, but apparently it's been a trend for over 100 years. So, and so the little hat, everything was one of Robert's old outfits. So, the doll did come in like a clown outfit, but clowns are creepy anyway, so let's put him in a sailor suit. So, legend states that Robert had supernatural and somewhat human abilities, and this started right away. So this is why I believe there was something also happening with the doll. The doll was like a magnet for energy, because the energy, the mischief caused by the doll literally started right away. Once again, Jean became very obsessed with this doll. He wouldn't do anything without this doll. It was very different than like a childhood doll or teddy bear that kids carry around. It was like this doll was everything to Jean. And let's see. So things started happening. Like they would hear the mother would be walking by the nursery or the bedroom, and they would hear Jean in there playing. Like, kids play and they're having a tea party and they're talking to their toys, but they would hear a voice talking back to Jean. That wasn't Jean's. It was a deeper spiritual voice. And they'd walk in the room and ask Jean, "Do you have a friend over?" And Jean would say, "No, that was Robert." Around the house, items started breaking. And they would ask Jean, "Did you do this?" And he said, No, Robert did that. Well, some people can say, no, well, the kid's just blaming his accidents on the toy so he won't get in trouble. But the reports of what was going on are beyond this. They would hear Robert walking around at night. They would see his body actually move. They would see his face change expressions. In this time, in the early 1900s, they had people from Jamaica, the islands, working for them. So Black people were working as help in the house of the Ottos. Now, I want to make this very clear because this is post Civil War. So these were not slaves. And this is going to come into one of the theories, and I don't actually agree with this theory. And I'm going to tell you guys why. These were hired employees of the Ottos. So people are like, oh, they were slaves. They cursed the doll. No. I don't believe this for a second, and we're going to say why I don't believe this. They blame the slaves of putting voodoo magic on the doll. I don't believe this because these weren't slaves. This was the early 1900s. The Civil War had happened. They were paid employees, okay? Now, there was a nanny, a maid who also acted as a nanny named Emmeline Abbott. And she cared for the Otto children. Now, she had a little girl that was around the same age as the Otto children. And a lot of this help at this time would live on the property with the family. So the daughter of Emmeline Abbott grew up with the Otto children. And for all intents and purposes, from what I saw in my research, is the daughter of the maid of Emmeline was welcomed into there was no issues with the fact that this little girl was black and they were white. They all played together. In fact, if you watch a lot of reenactments of this story, you see them all playing together, and you see the little girl included, and you see it. It's a very welcoming situation. Well, a lot of people speculate that Emmeline's daughter was the love child of Thomas Otto and Emmeline. I don't believe this, and this is why I don't believe this. I believe the daughter was another man's child because there's no proof of this whatsoever. And we see nothing as far as a strangeness between Mrs. Otto and Emmeline. There's no sense of like anger or jealousy. In fact, nothing at all. The whole family seems to be very supportive of the Abbotts. So I think this is what tends to happen with these stories, in my opinion. They're sensational enough as they are, but people try to find reasons as to why they become so sensationalized. And I think they paint these pictures of other things that have happened that haven't necessarily happened. And so I want to be very clear when it comes to stuff like that. Even though these people are no longer living to this day, we can't just say that this child was a love child when we have no proof. In fact, we have the opposite, like no proof whatsoever, no strangeness. Again, these people were not slaves. They were hired help. They were paid. They were on payroll. So if there had been an affair between Thomas Otto and Emmeline Abbott, you best believe she would have been off the payroll. Listen, the man might be the head of the house, but the woman's the neck. All right? Happy wife, happy life. I guarantee you she would have gotten rid of that woman and her child if that was happening. Okay? I just want to put that out there because here's one of another conspiracy around this doll. Emmeline's daughter, the little girl, did end up passing away at a very young age of a sickness. She got very sick. She wasn't murdered. Shit happens sometimes. She passed away. Now, of course, I understand. I don't have a child. We have people on this round table right now who do have children. I can't imagine what that would feel like to have one of my nieces or my nephews pass away as a child. I can't imagine the pain that someone would feel losing their child, especially to a sickness. And people speculate that when her child passed away, Emmeline took her child's spirit and threw it into Robert the doll. Now, people have picked up that one of the spirits around Robert is a little girl. However, I don't think Emmeline did this because as a woman, if I had a child who passed away, or if one of my nephews or my nieces passed away, there's no way in hell that I would want to curse their spirit to be stuck inside of an object. As the aunt or the mother, I would want, as painful as it would be for me, I would want their spirit to move on, to rest in peace. So that to me says that even if the little girl herself decided to attach to Robert the doll, I don't think the mother did it. Because I don't think a mother would do that to their child. I just don't think they would do that to their child. And also, we know for a fact that Emmeline Abbott loved the Otto children. She loved Gene and his sister. There are so many pictures, old pictures of her cuddling with the children, cuddling them, hugging them, loving on them. This woman loved these children. She was not a psychopath. Not many people are psychopaths. A very small percentage are psychopaths. that small percentage just happens to be running our world. But with that being said, for 99% of the population, they're going to have a moral compass. And they're going to understand, even as painful as it is to lose their child, that it's not the fault of these other two children, right? And they're still going to love those other two children as they are. So I just wanted to put that out there. All right. So Gene ends up growing up. As children do, they lose interest in their toys. So Robert kind of gets packed up and put in the house, and Gene goes off to school. Gene ends up becoming an artist, a very kind of famous artist, although there's speculation that he wouldn't have been as famous without the story of Robert, that Robert actually is the one that made his artwork famous. So Gene goes off and he studies in New York. He studies in Paris. He ends up meeting a woman named Annette Parker, whom he marries on May 3rd of 1930. She came from a relatively wealthy family, so they were able to kind of live this like Kardashian style life, and in the early 1900s in New York, and then they never had children. Then Gene's parents pass away, so Gene comes back to Key West. He moves into their old house, the artist house we see today in Key West, and Gene, as an adult, rediscovers Robert and pulls Robert down. So all of a sudden now, Gene is now back to the mental state he was when he was 3, in the sense that he is now attached to this doll again. Very strange. I'm 39. Hip, my doll stays packed up in my closet. I'm not walking around the grocery store with Hip at 39. Someone would probably institutionalize me if I were at 39, right? So, it's very weird. And so Anne starts noticing. Now, there's other behavior patterns within this marriage that are concerning. And I don't want to use, I guess we can say abuse. There's no physical abuse that's happening from what I understand, but there is a lot of mental and emotional abuse that's happening to Anne. Gene himself was a very eccentric guy. A lot of artists are, right? And when they moved to Key West, these behavior patterns within Gene kind of intensified. He would do things like take photographs of the house and like the coffee table where items. And again, this was the 1940s and 50s. Like, there was no like quick instant iPhone. They had to take it, develop it. And he would put a picture of how the coffee table looked in the drawer of each table, so that when Anne was cleaning, she would place things back exactly where they needed to be. Shit like that. Now, when he would have an art show, it was said that he would tell Anne that when he would go into his art exhibition, he would make her stand outside for like 10 minutes so that he could get all the attention before she came in. So to me, this is very strange. This is emotionally abusive, in my opinion. And then you add Robert on top of that, the doll that her husband is giving all this attention to. There's weird shit going on. In fact, I have a quote from her. Anne said, "I hate that fucking doll. He's Gene's best friend. Of course, he couldn't make any real friends." So obviously Anne knew that there was something wrong with her husband emotionally if he couldn't make any real friends of his own. He's obviously very OCD. She's obviously taking the brunt of everything. And this is a time, too, where divorce was not as common. They did not have children. Now, Gene eventually did die in 1974. And when Gene passed away, he left all of his artwork, his estate, his money to his sister, not to his wife. But he left the house to his wife, which to me is like, oh, hell no. I'm sorry. I'm like, listen, if I were to be married to someone who had children from a previous marriage, I would absolutely make sure in a will that those kids were 100% taken care of. I would never want to be the evil stepmom that came in and took away stuff from children, but there are no children, right? So why the hell is he leaving everything to us? That to me was just like another, just kind of a middle finger to her on his as he kicked the bucket. And so Anne had no choice but to sell the house in order to make some money to live off of. She ended up dying 2 years later in 1976. But when she sold the house, she left Robert in the house. Now, one thing I want to point out, too, that I forgot to mention, when Gene was alive in his older senior years before he passed away, he gave Robert his own room in the house. That's how dedicated to this doll Jean was. And now I'm going to show you what I believe from what I've researched, which room it is. And people can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, especially if you're from Key West. Will you pull the picture of the house up again, Morning? Because I want to show you guys how creepy this would have been. So you see the left-hand side of the house. We're facing the house. So the left-hand side where there's like a column with like bay windows, a circular column. It was one of those rooms. And so Robert apparently would sit out the window and watch people pass by. And there were people from the early, that are still alive to this day, from like the early 1970s, that will tell you walking home from school and seeing that doll staring down at them was horrific. Like it was freaky to them. And so the doll would watch them. So this doll was notorious in Key West even before Jean passed away and Anne passed away. But after Anne sold the house in 1974, the next family moved in, left Robert. I would have done the same thing. I'd have been like, listen, Robert, this is your house. You and I are parting ways. Good luck. And so apparently this is the next family that bought the house. The little girl found the doll in the attic and started playing with the doll. And then all of a sudden, weird shit started happening again with Robert the doll. Now we're getting into the 70s and the 80s now. So I think now we're looking at more scream queens, more horror films are out. So we're starting to understand this stuff a little bit. And I think from what I understand, that the next family was like, oh, hell no, we're not doing this. And they ended up donating the doll in 1996, I believe, to, I have the museum, the East Martello Museum, 1994, Robert was donated to the East Martello Museum. And that's when we have the rules on the website of how to greet Robert. All right, so do we want to look at some tarot cards? Do you guys have any questions before we move forward?
I want to know if Toy Story has anything to do with this concept.
That's a good question because I'm
so
sure. Yeah.
I mean, like, look at all the horror movies of dolls and possessions. I'm not sure if I don't think really they can capture a soul like that. Maybe like entity taking on the memories and acting upon it. And
well, we can talk about that too.
But maybe there is.
Toy
Stories, I'm sure that's all. I mean, Tom Hanks is the main character in Toy Story.
There are no coincidences. So, well, I will say too, like I said, some of the psychics who have been down and investigated this have said that there is more than one spirit attached to this doll, which I actually kind of believe. And a lot of them have picked up on demonic.
So that's Ace of Pentacles. So Pentacles is physical too. So this would say that these dolls do come to life, and Toy Story is based on entities controlling and inanimate objects that are attached to the inanimate object. And then we also have the Sun card, which says a yes as well. But it's like, what I'm getting from the Two of Swords is like adult eyes blocked. You know what I mean? Like,
well, with Robert the doll, the adult eyes were not blocked. They understood that there was some. They were like freaked out by this doll because they saw it move around.
Children energy right here with the Page of Cups.
And that's female energy too, the Page.
So can we ask? I don't want to dig. So this is. I said we're going to talk about poltergeist. So this is my kind of one of my theories as well. So for people who don't understand what poltergeist are is energy. It's an entity that's created from the emotions of a human. So like, that's why we see poltergeist a lot around like teenage girls, because Lord have mercy, teenage girls, listen. If I ever have kids, sometimes I really pray I'm a boy mom, because teenage girls, I don't know if I can handle a teenage girl. Bless my sister's heart. She has one boy and two girls. And my niece is, how old is my niece? She's 8. She's like 8 going on 16. You know, like I can't. And I love my niece so much. I mean, bless her heart. She tells her daddy all the time how many boys she has a crush on, who she wants to kiss at school. I never told my dad that stuff. So bless her. She's very open. But we see that with this energy. And so part of me thinks that what was happening with Robert as well is that it's almost an evolution of spirits. And I think Jean, even though I don't think the name giving had anything to do with it, or the clothes had anything to do with it, I think Jean kind of, we know he was eccentric. We know he was capable of mental abuse. I think he kind of created a poltergeist around the doll. And I don't think that this is borderlining on his consent. He's no longer living. Can we ask, is there just basically generally speaking, is there poltergeist activity around Robert the doll? As one, at least one
infringing on privacy, because I'm not channeling anything to do with him.
And the poltergeist, again, guys, poltergeists are not, they are not spirits from like a living person or a demon. It's created it's energy that takes a life form of its own from heightened emotion, if that makes, that's why there's so many stories about poltergeist, is it's like, we can literally create a ghost if we want to, because we're so energetically strong and our emotions are so strong.
I do agree. And of course, the negative energies, those emotions, the negative emotions have a very low vibrating frequency. So they'll often take on that physical form anyway.
Yeah, very harmful. You never hear a story of a sweet poltergeist. A kind, loving poltergeist.
I got an Ace of Wands, okay. This is child, like, spiritual energy. And the Swords is like the words and thoughts of. So the emotions that probably were projected by words or thoughts, based off of the emotions, Magician, created it. I do feel like this is a card that talks about waiting for something to happen, waiting for an event to happen. So maybe this energy is waiting for something, maybe a different energy to come through and take care of it. I don't know. It's definitely childlike energy.
Yeah, needy.
Yeah.
Was there were there already spirits attached to the doll when the doll left Germany? Because it happened so instantaneously. And poltergeist, from what I understand of poltergeist, is it doesn't happen right away. It's a buildup of energy. And so I'm wondering, and Robert or Jean was instantaneously addicted to Robert the doll, and they immediately started experiencing paranormal phenomenon in their house, in the Otto house, when Robert entered the scene. So I don't think Robert at I don't think a 3-year-old is going to be throwing a poltergeist on a doll. That is what I'm saying. Like, I think that happened over time, because I do believe there are multiple energies connected to this doll. I agree with that with the psychics.
High Priestess in reverse, which is an interesting energy. And I don't normally read cards in reverse, but to me that's like really ugly psychic energy with that in reverse. It's definitely female energy that was on it after it left, or before it left Germany. And I'm actually getting like a motherly energy. So maybe that's what Jean was addicted to. Maybe he wasn't getting enough attention from his own mother. So maybe that was that energy, because we have the Wheel of Fortune here. And the Wheel of Fortune is like saying that I'm almost getting that the doll was calling to Jean. Like the mother energy needed the little kid energy to feel whole, maybe. And maybe Jean also was wanting that motherly energy. So it was that exchange of maybe where there was a fracture in there, like a wound, perhaps. But this was something that created a lot of burdens around everything.
Mother energy could be nurturing. So they were looking for nurturing. The mother energy would be that nurturing.
I'm getting there was wounds from whatever was on the doll and wounds in the child. And then how wounds can just attach themselves to something else with a similar wound, right?
But let me tell you, there's one story I left out that I'm going to tell you guys now, that where Jean, the kid, started to actually become afraid of Robert himself. Now, I grew up, my 70s been to my parents' house. My mother is what we call very house proud. So all the furniture I had in my house growing up were old antiques, heavy, heavy, heavy. And I want to put that afford, because we're talking about the early 1900s. Nowadays, you like my desk is pretty cheap. I could push it over pretty easily. But in the early 1900s, we're talking most furniture, especially for upper middle class families, was heavy pieces of wood. Heavy secretaries, heavy armoires, heavy beds that I, as a 39-year-old woman, probably couldn't lift by myself. A 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old definitely could not push over. There was one night that they heard all this commotion in Jean's bedroom, and the parents came running down, and Jean's furniture, his armoire, had all been pushed over on the floor, and Robert the doll was positioned at the end of the bed staring at Jean the kid, and Jean was crying in the bed. And he told his parents Robert did it. And there's no way that a 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old, hell, a 39-year-old woman would have been able to push over furniture that heavy. So and that's, of course, a lot of these people are no longer living. Jean had no children to carry on these stories, so that could have been an exaggerated story because of speculation. Was there also, on top of a female motherly energy, was there also more of a demonic, darker energy that's masculine attached to it too?
Okay.
To create those more, because people do say who've interacted with Robert, there is a sweet side to Robert too, the doll. There is a very sweet side to this doll.
Okay. Because I was almost getting with that reverse high priestess card that it was kind of a demonic female energy, but let's see. Let me just double check here.
After that, I'll tell you what I got from that reverse high priestess.
Okay.
That we can ask about too. I mean, listen, God bless you, Robert. If I'm ever in Key West, I don't know if I'm actually going to go visit you because
I wouldn't.
Not today, Satan.
Just give it some and release it back into the light. That's what I say.
Well, I think that's kind of the point. Is I think we're going to have to start looking at this stuff as a collective and start healing
clean
it.
Up
Maybe
the shit. We need to clean up the shit. We can't just leave it or burn it.
No,
burn it. But the only way is to clean it up.
Well, let's think about this. If these are spirits on a doll, if we burn the doll, the spirits are just going to leave and go attach to something else.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm not necessarily getting demonic. What I'm getting is there was most certainly, I'm definitely feeling multiple spirits, but I'm getting that there's an energy revolving around like a war vet, like a warrior, like somebody that was in a war. Because I have the 5 of wands. Yeah, 5 of wands with the Knight of wands. So I don't know. I just feel like something to do with, it's not giving me like a male or female energy, but it's definitely a very ugly energy. Because 7 of Cups is there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of chaos around it. This is an energy. This is probably the energy that was toppling over the armor. You know what I mean? It's a very disappointed energy. It's an energy that just not happy and creates a lot of chaos.
So if we have anybody,
I want to actually just read some of the comments here. Sorry, Stephanie, because I think it might actually go hand in line with what you're saying. Doug is saying, I grew up part of my life in Key West. I passed this house almost every day on Eaton Street. There's something to it, but most of it has been overblown. We have ghost tours every night. It's next door to the theater church disco with quite a bit of paranormal activity as well. And across the street is the old Masonic Lodge, now turned art gallery. So when we're talking about multiple kind of entities type thing, it's very possible what he's saying there with a lot of stuff going on around it as well.
Well, and that's why, and thank you, Doug. That's why I wanted to bring up the whole the port cities and the fact that this is already a heightened.
Please delete. Sorry, please delete. Really, troll. Okay, he's in an old Civil War era fort called East Marcello Tower. Sorry, this is Doug again. He's in an old He's in an old Civil War era called East Marcello Tower. We have to ask for permission to take the picture, or bad juju could happen. That's the ghost
Yes.
story.
So, okay. So this is what I'm thinking, and I hate to use the word voodoo doll because we know that there is a good aspect to voodoo as well. But is Robert, for lack of a better term, has Robert the doll turned into almost like a voodoo doll where it's like a magnet for spirits? Like spirits see it and they just attach to it. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Like Robert's like, because it's already got spirits attached to it, the other spirits see it and they go, oh, home, and they go and attach to this object. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. All right, let's see.
And I was going to ask too, if while Stephanie's drawing, if we have any friends watching right now who are from Germany, because when you said war, I believe at this point Germany was called Prussia, and I'm not 100% sure about everything that was going on, the timeline of things in Germany, but we know we're heading up into the First World War, Second World War, and so if anybody from Germany knows more about the Steiff Company and it's possible in the Steiff family's involvement in the war, that might give us some indication too of what was going on behind the scenes. If some of these actually, we can ask that question next. If if there are a lot of toys that came out of the Steiff Company that were hosting spirits.
I have to clarify.
Interesting.
I know nothing about the Steiff Company. I didn't dig that deeply into it. But I'm assuming it was a pretty big company at one point because, hello, it created the teddy bear.
Okay. What I'm getting is, number one, I have the strength card. So that would be a major arcana, which I call the trump cards, right? These cards oftentimes will give us the yes or no to the answer. And then the minor arcanas are kind of like, the little details. So number one on the bottom of my deck is the Four of Pentacles. Four of Pentacles is oftentimes related to clinging on of something, not letting something go. And what I am getting is that I had the Chariot here, and I had to clarify the Chariot, and it was followed by the Tower card. So what that's telling me is anytime maybe it was moved and there was something crazy around the energy of this doll, the doll was used as an energy, like to
harness.
Yeah, the Seven of Swords is like a sneaky card, right? So it's about theft, but again, like I am getting like that harnessing because we have the light. So it's almost like it's harnessing the energy of the doll instead of harnessing the energy of like a person or something. Does that make sense?
So was this, I hope this isn't crossing the lines of consent, and Stephanie, you can decide this. Was this common for the Steiff Company to release toys with spirits attached to it? Or is Robert the doll?
I'm not asking about anybody, so I can ask.
Yeah, just the company. Was there something about this company where a lot of the toys they released, and somehow Robert just became the most famous one? For all we know, there's like hundreds of teddy bears out there.
I can remember a pastor coming into our house when I was small and burning all my Ninja Turtles. I wasn't happy because they told us that there's evil spirits in our Ninja Turtles. But thinking about it right now, maybe he wasn't wrong, But that would be on a mass scale, eh?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. If the Steiff Company was releasing,
but how they can do that actually. If you use animation TV and everything like that, and Ninja Turtle food, Ninja Turtle movies, Ninja Turtle toys, with that, they can do a spell on any kid. It's possible.
Yep.
Like
that is true. It's totally true.
Well, they were definitely doing something bizarre to these toys. Brice, I got my Three of Pentacles card.
Oh, that's the Coven card.
Yeah, when it's poorly aspected, I oftentimes will read that as like a Dark Witchcraft Coven card. It's not poorly aspected per se, but it's actually next to the Star card. So that could be non-human energy, perhaps. It was represented as a group of people collaborating to help children almost. Did they do any charity work by any chance?
Well, there's a story, and I can't remember if it was his wife or his sister and I can't remember the full details of her. People can correct us in the comment section if they would like to. Something happened with the female Stife where she was either sick as a child or something happened where that's why she created these teddy bears, was to give children like security almost. So there was like, but of course a lot. Yes, I had Cabbage. Actually, Cabbage Patch Kids are from Georgia, I believe. You can go and like, I'll have to look that. Actually, when you're pulling the cards next, I will look that up. But because Cabbage Patch Kids, I believe, are from Georgia. Yes, I had Cabbage Patch Kids. You get a birth certificate with them. Ooh, that's creepy. Hip did not come with the birth certificate.
I never owned one because they always creep me out.
Yeah, they were born from cabbages. Hip never came with a birth certificate. So
this gets really strange. Okay. So I feel like the intent behind it was not what it seems. So I have the World card with the Wheel of Fortune card, which was next to the Three of Pentacles, which was then clarified by the Six of Pentacles. So it's almost like I could be completely off kilter with this. This could be my imagination or my ego playing into this. I'll be very frank about that. It's kind of like, because of what time period we're looking at, it could be the changing of the energy worldwide, starting with attacking the little people. Okay. This is an energy that would talk about like anxiety. And then we have this Hermit card, which is almost like what happened to Gene. It's like he hermited, right? He isolated himself and just was like very attached to this thing. But then we have the the Seven of Pentacles with the Hierophant card. So I'm getting a few different things here. I'm not going to go ahead and say that they were purposely putting entities into these objects. I do think there was some sort of intent, though. And it wasn't what it seemed like. Does that make sense? Like, you're giving kids toys, for maybe charity or helping kids that are sick and everything. But it's almost like the intent was more or less to make things worse. There was definitely a spiritual something that happened with these toys.
It's a variation of spiritual warfare, it seems.
Yeah.
So can I ask, and I will say before I ask the next question, yes, Cabbage Patch Kids are from the North Georgia mountains, Appalachian Mountains. So Stephanie, when you're here in Georgia, should we go visit the factory, take a tour? You can. And do a deep dive into Cabbage Patch Kids.
All right. Okay.
Would our viewers like that? We can present it on Aquarius Rising Africa. Would you guys like for us to do that when Stephanie's down here? If the viewers want that, we'll go Nancy Drew the shit out of Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yeah, I think that's a fabulous idea.
They're from, I'm just looking right there at the website. They're from the North Georgia mountains. You can actually go and like to the factory and see them being born of the cabbages. It's like an amusement thing. And so we can deep dive and go up there and take footage and present it. So and did not think, so thank you to the person who brought that up. I don't know which subscriber brought that up. Thank you so much we're going to give you the credit for that, for telling us that, reminding us that these Cabbage Patch Kids had birth certificates, because this is definitely, Cabbage Patch Kids was definitely something from my childhood. So thank you. That was going to give that subscriber, that's totally your idea. So that's why we're all doing this together. Now back to Robert.
That was Valerie, and now I see Project Rejects talks about a Cabbage Patch hospital. That's kind of creepy, with blind cement baby heads and cabbages in front.
Yes, that's what we're going to go to. That's what Stephanie and I are going to go to. We're going to go. I've never been there, but I knew friends growing up went there to tour it, and I was always so jealous. But we should do I'll do the research, and then we can go tour it, Stephanie, and then we can present it with Mornay and Shanti and show the footage. And I mean, but thank you to the person who suggested that, because that's why I started my channel. Because I didn't even think about Cabbage Patch Kids, because when we put multiple minds together, we solve problems. Now, Stephanie, Was the Otto family targeted for a reason? Were they specifically targeted? I don't want to know what the reason is. I just want to know.
Do you think that's infringing on privacy?
I don't know, because it's not asking who targeted them. I just want to know.
Well, if I'm getting a reason, then it could be looking into the actual family and things maybe we're not supposed to know about. I'm more or less concerned about the Otto family.
Well, what if we saw the reason? Could we just ignore it and just say yes or no, and not say the reason? I don't think there's any Ottos left, to be honest with you guys. I don't think.
No, even so. I'll just simply ask a yes or no if they were targeted.
Or we can ask, generally speaking, do some certain companies put hexes or juju onto these toys to target certain families? Is there a master plan behind this?
Okay. That's kind of what I was getting with the last reading, though.
Yeah, like they're actually, but specific families, not just generally like throw them out there and see what happens, but like specific families. Because I say that because the Otto family, now I don't know how far back their ancestors came from the Germany area, but that's a German family. They were English and German, but I don't know how many generations they're separated from Europe. It could be 10 generations separated, so it wouldn't matter anymore. Could be 1 generation separated, and so there are deeper ties there. I don't know. That's something I don't know.
All I'm going to say is yes, but I'm not going to go into detail. I'm getting information that I can't go into.
So yeah,
they also do an adoption ceremony. Sorry. For these Cabbage Patch Kids, apparently. Yeah, I actually remember hearing about that.
American Girl. I mean, we have American Girl dolls here, where they have like, do you know the American Girl dolls, Stephanie? They were big when we were kids.
I had lots of them.
I had them too. That's one thing my mother escaped because they were so expensive. She saved all of our dolls, and my nieces and nephews play with them now. But you could take them. Now they have, when Stephanie and I were little kids, they just had catalogs you ordered from. But now they have American Girl stores where you can take your doll in and have your doll, like a cast put on your doll. If she needs to go to the hospital, you can have like tea parties with her.
I had a Magic Attic Club dolls too.
I don't know.
Very, very similar to American Girl.
I'm just looking here again. Someone's still talking about the package cat kids. Look at that. People hitting themselves for cabbage patch, and people are getting into pads. It's crazy.
That's nuts, guys. And for what? For your kid to open it on Christmas morning, play with it for 5 minutes, and then be done?
But this is what I'm saying. This is quite funny. It would definitely be worth looking into because, I remember. I mean, I was quite old, a teenager when the Cabbage Patch Kids came out. But I wouldn't have minded one just because I kind of liked them. But I never got one. But I remember their birth certificates, and I remember you could adopt them. And I didn't know that there was fights where people were hitting each other.
Freaking crazy. Well, they're from Georgia, so when Stephanie is down here next, we're gonna go in and do an investigation.
Wow.
So so it'll be a few weeks time from now. I'll do the research. Again, when Stephanie and I work together, I'm the one that researches because she needs to be as clear-minded as possible without any influences when she's pulling the cards. Martha Nelson Thomas. Okay, cool neck bone. Yeah, I'm going to do a bunch of research into that. I mean, why cabbages of all things? And the Appalachian Mountains, there's magic there in the Appalachians, the oldest mountain chain in the world, which I think they harness. We've talked about that with the Tennessee, with the Isis temple. So locations are also, I believe, very important as well. So I know we're going over an hour. I have one last question, but do you guys have any questions before I ask the last question? Oh, yeah, nowhere. A doll hospital in the middle of nowhere. Screw a people hospital. We're just going to put a doll hospital out.
So Angie just talked about Elf on the Shelf in the chat.
Okay, Elf on the Shelf is the creepiest shit ever. Do you guys have Elf on the Shelf in South Africa or South America?
What is that? I've heard of it. What is Elf on the Shelf?
Elf on the Shelf. We did not have when we were kids. It's these elves that come out. So let me explain this to the people who aren't Americans. you get these elves, and they come out the day after Thanksgiving. So our Thanksgiving is the last Thursday of November. So Friday, the elf now appears in your house. They're like this big. And the elf is there to spy on the children, to take messages back to Santa Claus. And the kids can't touch the elf. If they touch the elf, then its magic wears off. And so every night the parents have to get up and move the elf. Now let me tell you, if you Google elf on the shelf funny, you will see there are some really funny parents. Like I saw one where a parent, elf, in the morning they freeze. So wherever they are, they're frozen by the time is up. I have seen parents put elf and Barbie in bed together. And they wake up. So the kids have to go hunt and find the elf on the shelf and find where he is. Right? And so if the kid pitches a temper tantrum before Christmas, that's kind of genius. The parent can say, oh, your elf is watching you. Going to tell Santa Claus. You know, I've seen, I was babysitting for kids once where the parents put the elf on a dartboard and pinned the elf around with the dart so it was up and all the toys were sitting around watching the elf. But yeah, it's this idea that the elf can one time I was babysitting for another family and the elf was in the refrigerator and there was they had one of these juice bottles and the head was a Barbie and the elf was making out with the Barbie head and was frozen in the refrigerator. I mean, so the kids have to go on and listen. So my nephew is, again, way more sensitive than my nieces. And last year, because he still does the Santa thing, last year he accidentally knocked the elf on the shelf and he was crying for a day because he thought he took the magic away. So my sister had to create a story about how it's okay. It's not that big of a deal. Santa said it was fine. You know, so for sensitive kids, I think elf on the shelf could be quite traumatic. For other types of the more rambunctious kids, maybe not so much. Stephanie, her camera went. But you guys, I have one last question, but if you guys have questions before I ask,
yeah.
Steph, are you still?
I'm just seeing there's just a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff people are saying. Beauty and the Beast. I mean, I don't even know American Doll. I don't know what that is.
American Girl.
Teddy Ruxpin.
Yeah.
There's just so many. Yeah.
I talked about Teddy Ruxpin in my episode. I had a Teddy Ruxpin. Let me tell you, those things were scary as shit. Teddy Ruxpins. I wish my mother had saved my Teddy Ruxpin because I could sell that sucker on eBay for a lot of money today. But Teddy Ruxpin, they put a cassette tape in his butt, and so he talked. Teddy Ruxpin. He talked from the cassette tape in his butt. Yeah. So.
Jeez.
Yeah.
No wonder Americans have so many scary doll movies because it's actually true.
I know, right?
Why put it?
Yeah.
Why put it in somebody's doll's butt? That's not.
You would put a cassette tape in Teddy Ruxpin's butt. And he would talk to you. That was Teddy Ruxpin. But the last question I had is: there a message that Robert the Doll wants to tell everybody? If you're comfortable channeling that.
No, sorry.
Okay.
No.
Well, is there a message that God wants us to know about these toys?
Yeah, that's more like it. I'm not putting any dark energies on my cards.
All right.
Yeah.
I actually don't think all the energies on Robert are. I do still think there's some good spirits.
I'm not taking a chance with that one.
Yeah, I know. I think
a chaotic life. I don't need things flying off my shelves and no, I'm good.
So let's ask what is going forward? Is there a way to ask, are we going to be responsible for, is humanity going to be responsible for healing these toys, basically, or healing the spirits associated with these toys?
Good question.
So yes. So transmuting it back to light, right?
Yeah.
It actually might have to come from those who might have been cursed from the inanimate objects, because this one was in reverse, and we have this card which is about disappointment and everything. So again, we have that Page of Pentacles, that childlike energy coming through. When the reverse, and what I'm getting from that in reverse isn't the typical reversal of that card, but what I'm getting from that is those children who might have been hexed that are now adults now, that were affected perhaps, and have had bad things happen to them in their life. Perhaps they might need to be taught how to maybe transmute that energy. I mean, I'm sure like light workers and stuff like that would be able to do so, but we have 2 yeses there.
Yeah.
Can I
Well, it's
ask?
typical. Yeah, it's typical clearing out karma. That's what we're doing
Yeah.
right now on this planet. We're just clearing out karma. And what I
Yeah.
get a feeling of is the dark guys use loosh. So I just see like all these kids underneath the ground being tortured, soul splitting, and they're using this like energy to try to do their voodoo up there with these dolls. So it's all these trauma, these like resentments, angers, fears that comes out underneath, and they're trying to use
Combination.
that energy. Yeah, it's a combination. It's not like one spirit or one entity. It's almost like they're using that energy to try to do it, but they're failing. They maybe not getting it right as they would like it to be, because they still have to get over our free will. And some kids are innocent, and some kids can have that doll, and that energy just transmutes because they that kid can't be. So it's almost like a maybe it will work kind of thing, but it is our responsibility to clear this energy, because we have allowed this, we have done this, we've done it with our own family, with our own little, like the Bible says, there's no one big sin than the other one. So every lack of forgiveness or any little bit of resentment or any little bit of fear we have within ourselves, it all contributes to this collective. So we collectively are responsible for our happiness on this planet and clearing up the bad shit. That's for sure. So I get those cards. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But as we get happy within ourselves, we automatically transmute that negative lead load, as we call it.
Yeah,
the
I
lead
almost
load.
feel like it's I almost feel like what I was getting is those that have been affected by it, if they can even just transmute their own trauma, their own energy, they don't necessarily have to sit there with the doll and try to do any kind of light work stuff on it or anything like that. It's like literally they just need to heal themselves because their souls agreed to have this happen.
I'm getting the creeps, because as I was saying what I was saying, I was like realizing, okay, I have to go give that dollar hug, and that's the last thing I
know.
want to do.
I was sitting there in my mind's eye. I saw all these like grown ass adults sitting having tea parties with their old childhood toys, being like, "All right, everyone's gonna go home and like pull their toys out, be like, we have to have a come to Jesus moment right here. We're gonna have all these like 46-year-old people having tea parties to try to calm the karma between them and their toy." I actually want to ask that though. For me specifically, I don't know if you guys would want to hear. I want, if there's anybody watching right now and you have a crazy story with a toy that you wouldn't mind sharing, will you email me at esotericatlanta@gmail.com? Because I want to hear about other stories with people. I think this is a more common phenomenon than we think it is. Now, I've been around a lot of haunted places, but I've never had a haunted object. Like, I know HIP's not haunted. Like, I have never had a haunted object, but I have been around a lot of haunted places. But I want, seriously, if there's people watching right now and you want to share your story, I want to say, maybe you're watching this and going, oh my God, I'm not crazy. Oh my God, I'm not crazy. That toy was freaking. We have Annabelle. There's other toys out there that are now museums that are haunted as well, like Annabelle. Anyway, so I want to hear more stories. Maybe it was a G.I. Joe or a Transformer that was haunted. And you're like, dude, that car was driving itself. Like, I mean, Transformers, look at that. They go from like a car to like a robot. I mean, that's a consciousness, right?
I mean, that's even talking about shape-shifting right there, too.
Yep.
They put the truth in the movies. Just study the movies, and you'll get more information out of that than you would in school.
They're telling they're telling us all the time what they've been doing, and we know this more and more. And now when we're looking at the movies, we can actually understand that and actually see it in action in front of us. Yeah. Wow. Okay, ladies, it has been amazing, and it has been so fun talking about this topic, but we definitely have to do follow-ups, right? On these dolls and things. And when we can do that, then we'll have I think the Cabbage Patch Kids is a good one as well.
Well, it'll be a few weeks before we're able to do that one, but I was thinking maybe the audience, do you guys want me to next week? Do you want to cover Annabelle? Do you want me to cover Annabelle next week? The other haunted doll in America, another famously haunted doll, or do we want to read our subscriber stories, like, or do another topic next week while we wait for the Cabbage Patch Kids?
Well, I think we should do this. Let's see what the audience brings back. But it would be nice to do another haunted one. I think it's nice to have them together. My 10 cents worth.
Yeah, I mean, we could do. I wasn't planning on covering Annabelle, but I can cover Annabelle if that's something. Because then we get into the Warrens, the famous Warren family, the demonologists. So if you guys want me to cover Annabelle, we can cover. And Stephanie's just gonna have to promise not to look into Annabelle, and we'll cover Annabelle next week, which is another haunted doll, or a Raggedy Ann doll.
Cool.
I think it's Raggedy Ann. I'll have to double check on my research.
Oh, creepy things. It's so fun.
All these little girls, no little girl's gonna get a doll for Christmas this year. All the parents are like, nope, not buying a doll. So
talk about Halloween time. It's Halloween time and we're doing creepy dolls. And I saw Netflix is bringing out a AI doll, which like looks super creepy.
No,
That's
thank
just
you.
horrific. Don't even say things like that. It's
coincidental that we're talking about it. It's like we're in line with the season, you know.
Yep.
We should,
I
we should do a show on Halloween again with Jesse's this time as well, and just telling people how evil and crazy this time of year is.
Oh, we could get Jessie on to talk about these toys too. I wonder if she has more information about Robert and Annabelle and all these famous toys. That would be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Okie dokie. Beautiful. As always, time flies when we're having fun. So thank you to you beauties from the other side of the globe Gallivanters, for joining us here on the ass end of Africa. We love you. We appreciate you. We so love hearing about all your haunted stories there. We'll tell you some of our African creepiness here as well. I think we should come up with some African haunted stories as well. There's quite a few.
I would love that. I would love that so much.
It's the Tokolosi.
The Tokolosh. Hey, you guys, I grew up with the Tokolosh, okay? The Tokolosh is a little dude that stands, I don't know how he stands, okay? But it's a little thing that the Xhosa people, have, and they will sleep with their beds on bricks. So the bed doesn't have legs, it has bricks, because for some reason the Tokolosh can't climb up the bricks. I don't know why. But it's a very ugly little thing, and he's the meanie. And there's lots of stories about the Xhosa people and the Tokolosh. So it's very fun. We can talk about these. Yeah, this is a fun Mystery Monday.
If bricks are made of clay, then that would make sense why anything that has a nefarious spirit or something like that would stay away from the bricks.
The thing is, I think it's because the Tokolos is too small and it can't really climb, so you have to have your bed higher than the Tokolos. Your bed has to be high.
It's not that. It has to be something to do with the bricks. It is something to do with the bricks. I can't remember, but it was.
Do you
know what? I'm going to put this out here too, because I know all of us, we want to include everyone. So not only do I want you to email me at esotericatlanta@gmail.com your toy stories that you have, your haunted toys. If you're from another part of the world, because I totally want Shanti and Mornay to present these folklore from their country. But if you have a folklore from your country that you're like revisiting now in your head as we awaken, and you want me to research it and Stephanie to pull on it, just email me at esotericatlanta@gmail.com, and I'll be more than happy to do that, because this is, even though we're presenting more of the American stories, like, this is our effing Earth. Like, it doesn't matter if you're American, European, Australian, African, whatever. It's our planet. It's all of our stories, and we're taking it back. So wherever you're from, if there's a story you really want me to cover and re-examine, just email me at esotericatlanta@gmail.com, and I will be more than happy to do that.
Awesome. I love it.
Okay, Put on your white sheets. We're gonna have fun. Okay, guys. As always, love the show. Love you madly. God bless you all. If you haven't already, like, share, subscribe, share, comment, troll, do whatever. We love our trolls. We really, really, really do. You guys keep us strong. You keep us motivated. It's beautiful. Love you all. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.